A new project. So this is a phase where you are going to start learning how we build scalable systems, right? With the right architecture, make sure that when we are building applications, the things are such a way that yeah, it can be scaled, right? And go into real production. Okay, so that's what we are going to show in this series. So for that, I'm working on a project where like a voting system project where um the goal is to be used in schools for now, um, to allow elections going on within school systems, right, to be seen in real time, right? The leaderboard should be seen in real time. So when students are voting for their leaders, the student can use the app to be seeing, okay, the number of votes that went in, the percentage of this person in real time, not just wait until the leaders. So we vote and we don't even see anything until they declare it later on. But for transparency, we are going to create a system like that, starting from schools. So the name of the app is going to be Kura. So it's a Swahili word that I use. Kura just means vote, right? So the title for that will be Kura, right? So you see, this is my home, the default one, and then that's what it's showing here, right? I'm changing it to Kura. That's the name of the project, and then let's start removing stuff. So right now, this color scheme and things, I'm removing it. Okay. So then debug show check, we check it to false, and then what again? So this is the default home page, right? First, let's run this thing and see how it shows up. Yeah, flatter demo this thing. So this screen we will not need it, right? But then that's not the focus here. So I just remove the debug folder. But the focus is first the architecture. Let's talk about the architecture that we want to use in the system. Okay, so in the lib, this is where main thing going to happen. The very first folder that we are going to create is going to be called the presentation. So this is the folder where you will put in everything that you want inside, right? Everything that you want regarding the UI. So this is where all the UI for the things go. So going back to the lib, make sure you are not selecting the this. You can either select main or that before you create a new folder, so that it doesn't create a new folder is not created within this. Another folder that we need is the application folder. This folder is going to handle the logics, right? The basic logic, I mean all the basic operations that will, it will control the error state, the loading state, and things that will be showing on the UI. That's what the application will show, right? It is just immediately below the application. Now going deeper, I'm selecting lib, or you select Mendel that before you create a new one. So the thing that we also need there is what was the name? We need yes, the models. This is where we will write all the models for like a user model. Like there will be a lot of classes there. I'm going to create a new one called the data. Yes. So these are the four features that you see, right? You have the presentation that only worries about UI, the UI. The models are the various models that will be using in the system. The data is going to be the one handling data, the source of the data, either coming from Firebase, coming from Hive, coming from a particular backend API, right? This one worries about all AI, all data. This one worries about the various classes that we'll be using inside the app. And presentation is the one that worries about the UI. So the UI doesn't know what's happening in this. It just calls it a function, and then the rest of them handle their parts. So application handles this part, data handles this part, model handles this part, and presentation will worries about its part, and they communicate among themselves, right? So everyone has a focus. So this is really a separation of concern. within the system. So we have the presentation, the model, the data, and the applications. Okay. So in our main orders, this was so presentation is going to main orders will always be here outside. And inside the presentation is where we are going to start with. We'll go to the others as time goes on. And then we want to write some pictures down so that we'll know that when we are going for it, we'll be filling them alongside. So let's start with um the data layer, right? In the data, create the data. So it's going to contain another folder for repositories, right? The data depository for the various aspects, right? Creating another one under data. That's so repositories. Another one is services. So this is where we create the services that we will need. For the services, we have let me create a file there. Hive service dot that. Then another service that I will need is Firebase service dot that. Every settings about Firebase will also be here. Yes, so let me rename this. That's not how we rename. Yeah. So Firebase underscore service dot that. Then I will need, oh, I wanted to create a new file. Then dual service dot that, right? And then I also worry about notification. So notification dot that. So these are the four services that I will be using. The geo service is one layer for this one is used to communicate with a backend API. The Firebase is going to connect with Firebase. Hive service is for local storage, right? And notification is for notifications, of course. So these are the four services that we'll be using in the data layer, right? So in the repository, also it is a voting system, so we will have to define. So we need maybe user dot that, right? So there will be a user dot that, or let me call it user repo dot that, right? Then what again? We might also need election underscore repo dot that. Yeah, so these are things that we'll worry about later on. Okay, so there's no much worry now. So we set, so that's what they will contain. So the data layer, for example, contains what? The repository and the services, and the repository contains the various repos. We'll use them later on along the way. It's going to be a robust learning in this stage now. And the services are the deal service, Firebase, and all that. So we just created the folders now. Okay, okay, let me close the data layer. And then the application layer, you see in the application, in the data layer, we wrote some repos, right? So we are going to here, we are going to for the various applications, we are going to user for the application user notifier dot that is going to be notifying the user repo. This one is going to directly communicate with the repo. And then we have election, right? Election for notifier. This one is going to communicate with the election. So we have, you see under data, we have the repositories. We have the election repo, right? So the election notifier is going to be notifying the election repo and also be notifying the UI. So and then the user notifier will be notifying the user, and then the user is also going to worry about the content, right? Okay, so that's about them for now. And this thing is shaking, but we'll manage for now. Fix the issue after this video. And in the models, we are going to have what are the various models that we will use. So we have user dot, that's right. There is going to be a user model, and then in the models we are going to have another like election, right? But that's wow, yeah. So these two for now, right? So from the application I'm building, these are the models that I'll be writing on, like user or maybe customer and then election. But this is not a customer; it's like a user, right? A voter. So we'll talk about that later on. We'll go deep into them, but I'm just laying down the various layers that you need to have and putting things, but we'll make sure that we'll change them along the way, right? Because the application, you don't have to be rigid. There will be things that will be changing and things that we may not need. Or when you are that is evolving and then we are receiving feedback, we'll see how can handle it. Now the presentation now. For the presentation, we are going to create a folder, a file called um let me say, let's call it router dot that. We'll explain it later. It's going to be handling the communication between pages, right? And then inside the presentation again, let's create a new folder called um screens. This is a folder that will be handling all screens. Inside the presentation again, let's create a new folder called um yeah, we have the screens, right? So components, a various component that we want to use. So the router, all reusable components will be placed under components, and the screens will be here. Under screens, we have three major screens for now. So we have one folder that will be handling the auth, like authentication screen, right? Log in and log out, those guys. And then another screen that will also worry about, will also worry about, let's say, dashboard, or how do you call it? Those one that you enter, uh, splash screen, yes, splash screen. Like then those one that when you are entering the app for the first time, splash flow and yeah. So those you have the odds that. So these are the various screen that you also be worried about. Is the auth, the splash, and then the other pages, right? So these are the screens, and for the screen you have the all screens, and then we will be having the auth login and log out here. So let me create a file like that called login dot that. Another one, um, sign in, sign up dot that. So these are going to worry about the auth, right? Authentication. And then for the screen, the splash screen, these are going to be like onboarding screens and those stuff. That will be under splash. And then the auth is what we set already. Now what how do we handle the other pages now? So for the other pages, we are going to group them under one folder again, under screen. So let's just call it pages, right? So for that we can have like home page. So let's just call them screen, right? So over here, do you need, this is going to be too deep, right? I mean the pages. Let's call it yeah, so the auth splash and the pages. And then for the pages too, we'll be opening them down later on. So but let me see, I have, let's say, home screen, right? So you have the home screen. Oh, let me delete that. What did I do? You need to create, for the pages, you need to create a file called home screen dot that, right? That'll be under pages. Let's say another one called vote screen dot that, and then another one, let's call it leaderboard screen screen dot that. So you have the home screen. So these are the various pages that I'll be using in the system. Votes where you can go and vote. Leaderboard where you can see the real time, who is leading, who is whatever, and then the home screen. So those are the three stuff that we need in our application, right? Yes. So let me close the screens as well. Presentation. Okay. So now we need application data, models, and presentation. But then there will be something that's this particular page. So you have the components, right? That will hold all the various reusable component that we want to create. And the screens are the various screens that will, and then there will be router. This one router is going to be handling taking all the screens and then be moving them. Like when you are moving from one page to another, we are not going to use that navigator bar, but we are going to use the router. But then we'll do that setup later on. But right now, let's look at, so inside the screen, I have the authentication screens, login, logout to be here. If I open it, you can see login, logout, sign up. And then for the pages, no, let me go to splash screen. Splash screen will contain the splash, the onboarding screens, and then the pages contain the various pages I want to work on. So home screen, leaderboard, and all that. And all of them are under screens, right? So the components are the reusable component that we use. For example, I can make a text field dot that, right? That will be one handling text field for me. I can make another one for um let's say so buttons, right? So floating, floating action, so floating button dot that. So any reusable or maybe any card, let's say um action card, a card that when you click on it, it will take an action or something like that. So those are the various components that we use, and then those components can be reused across the screens, right? Uh-huh. And then there is going to be some and another file that will handle um let's call it core or constant. I call them constant, right? Dot that. So in the constant, that's where we are going to define maybe the name of the app and things for reuse to be reused, and the colors, the various colors. We are going to set up the themes and everything that we want to use. All of them will be inside there. Right? The theme, the everything, any constant thing that we want to use, we'll put them here. When we are doing it, you will get to understand. But then this is here. We want to show you the architecture, right? Maybe I can make it bigger, show you the architecture of what we are building, right? So let me close everything. So the lib now is in such a way that when you open it, you can see the various layers. We have the main dot that is outside at the same level as these four layers. We have the presentation layer. That's what's going to be showing everything concerning the UI with the presentation layer. The models layer, they are going to be the various classes and users and things that will be having inside. The data layer going to communicate with external sources, where the source of the data is. This layer will be the one worried about that, and the application will be the one notifying the front, the UI, the presentation, and also the data, right, through the model. So it's going to be, we will see them in action when we start building, and then it contains notifiers. So election notifier, user notifier, because they are notifiers, right? And then they are going to notify the data, like you see the repositories, the data contain repositories and services. The repositories are going to use services in order to handle data. The repositories are going to use services to handle data. The services are geo service. This one is going to come from, if we are using an API, custom API. Firebase is when we are using Firebase service. Hive service when we need the local storage, and notification service when we are needing when we are doing notifications. Okay, so repositories. For repositories, so I need to talk about the data. I'm not done talking about it. Yeah, the data repository. You have the election repo. That's because a user repo. That's what I will be using inside. So that's why I use them. Right. So let me close it. And then so that's about the data, because we have election and this thing. So I created a model for election and user, because that's what the repo requires. We have the repo for them. Application layer 2, you have election notifier and a user notifier. Right. You see, once I have this repo in a data, I've made their corresponding notifiers in application, and also their models in models layer. All right. So with that, this presentation, right? So now in the presentation, this is what is worry about the actual UI. So these are components are going to be reusable components. I open it right now. You will see action card, bulletin, button, text field. They are going to be action taking those components. The screens, you have um the authentication screens that will contain login, logout. Pages are the pages that I'll be using, and splash screen is going to be the um onboarding screens. And then pages are the various pages I want to use: home screen, leaderboard screen, road screen. This one can further be organized, right, if the thing gets huge. But yes, so but this is the basic these are the basic layers that we need to have. And the constant, here we're defining some constant to use across the app, and the router will be the one handling the routing of pages between as we just move from one page to another. Everything of this here is going to worry about the UI, and the UI is going to, one powerful thing that we'll be using throughout will be Riverpod. So under application, we are going to add another how do you call it, file called providers. What's that? It is in this file that we actually have all the repos stored here. We are going to group all the repos here, right? All the repos will be grouped here. Then from there, we'll now be able to do election and user notifier. They will get their they will communicate with the repos in this file, right? And then this file will communicate, will take the repos from the data, right? And then this election and notify and any other notifier that we'll add, they will all communicate with this provider, right? So the provider will be the one to provide the repos. Basically, you provide the repos and the data in a format that these guys need, right? And then you can go front, forward, or backward. So there is a unique flow of data. So right now, yes. So this is our architecture. This is our structure, and then we'll start coding from next video.